The following program is being brought to you on the Seventh Wave Network. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit seventhwavenetwork.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome. It's time for expansion. It's time for vibrational attunement and channeled messages with the mothers. This is Conscious Conversations with Angela Blaha. In our program today, you will learn about new states of consciousness and seek unity within yourself. Now, here is your host, Angela Blaha.
Welcome, everyone, to Conscious Conversations. I'm Angela Blaha, and my guest today is Dave Barnett. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Today, we are talking about two of my very favorite things, and we are consciously discussing past lives and the Akashic Records. So, Dave, can you tell us a little bit about the Akashic Records? What are the Akashic Records?
The Akashic Records are equivalent to a great big repository of all the data, of all the history of everybody and everything throughout the universe. A lot of people wonder, well, what does it look like? And people get images of looking in books or libraries. That's one metaphor. You could think of it as digital storage in various forms. That's another metaphor. Some cultures on the planet see it as being represented like writings on palm leaves that are stored. But it's everywhere, and it is very much like our idea of a hologram, that the picture is in every piece of the hologram. This data is in every piece of our universe. So people can tap into this data anywhere, and people can develop their sensitive gifts so that they can access this data to help themselves and help others.
So are there like a separate Akashic record for every single thing?
Pretty much. We're so constrained by our 3D world of thinking that there are limitations or physical constraints on how much data you could store, things like that, how many CD-ROMs you have. It's unlimited in the universe, and therefore the actions that happen to all people, all things, even down to very minute things, all that data is recorded, and it's kept in an active repository that we call the Akashic Records that people can tap into.
Mm-hmm. So how do we tap into that?
What we do is people go into meditations, and they use different forms of creative visualization or guided meditations to start with. For example, you might go into an idea that you're traveling to the first layer of the spiritual realm, and you go in amongst the buildings that are there, and you select the one that is the library. You walk into the library, and one way to access the records is to, say you're working with somebody, Joe, and you set the intention to go to Joe's cubicle where his volumes are stored. And so staying with the book model, you could go to sort of a small side niche where there are a whole lot of volumes, and maybe a guide is there to help you select the books, because maybe Joe has a problem and he says, I have a sore shoulder. Have other past lifetimes influenced that by coming through and affecting this? And so you would ask the guide, can you show me volumes that have Joe's records where I can look through those and we can see past lifetimes where maybe Joe had a physical accident or even a deliberate injury of some type that would affect his shoulder, and the guide might pull down 3 books. You could open those, flip through, get an idea of the lifetime based on the images or the impressions you get from the material, and between those 3 books, you start to form a picture of why Joe has past lifetimes that are still kind of bleeding through or leaking through to this lifetime and affecting them. So that's one way that people get it. Another way that people see the Akashic records, and I've met other people who do it this way, is they end up with a large book in front of them, and some of them go through what seems to be an elaborate ritual on the spiritual plane to be able to approach the book and to access the book. The guides there are letting them know that this is not something to be treated lightly or frivolously, and it is it's a great permission to be allowed to access it. So you have this large book. If you've ever seen a library dictionary that's maybe 6 or 8 inches thick, it might look like that. And when you open it up, it miraculously opens to the page or pages of interest, and you start looking at the information there, and you may see images, and the images may go from being just a static image of people in a setting to almost like a video where you can move forward or backwards in time and see what the information is like. So this is another way to access those records. And it doesn't take a whole lot of work in creative visualization to get to the point where you can travel and do this or go to places that you feel spiritually secure that you can access these records.
Right. So I access my records, my own Akashic records, and like I've never actually seen the record hall or the hall of records like they talk about, and it changes every single time. Is that normal or not? Or
Well, I started out doing it sort of the long way, where it was a great big book that opened in front of me, and I learned how to manipulate the images and get the context, who's who in the picture, what the life setting is, where do they live, that type of thing. These days now, when I do readings, as soon as we set an intention with the client on what they want to learn about, I just started getting the hits on the information. I just kind of get images in my head of who's who and what's what, and I get dates and places and things like that. So I think you can sort of start out the basic approach, and then as you get more experienced with it, more sophisticated, your clarity of your channel to that connection grows, then it gets easier and less need for something that looks like the model of a book or a library. Right.
So this understanding that we have Akash, and that everything has an Akash, we have to accept the theory of reincarnation, right?
I think so. When people ask me about reincarnation, and I come from a traditional church background when I was growing up. My dad was an Episcopal priest, so I heard a lot of discussions about reincarnation and those concepts of Eastern religions. But here's what I really run into a problem is, and it's such a satisfying solution. So, say a young couple has their first child, and their first child is born has some type of issue and health issue, significant health issue, birth defect, and after 2 or 3 days of heroic effort, the infant dies. That's really tough to accept, with the idea that we have one life to manifest the glory of our soul and the glory of God, or however you envision the universal consciousness. You have one chance, and by golly, if I stand back and look at that objectively, that kid had 2 or 3 days of never knowing anything, never exercising free will, that type of thing, and so it just doesn't work. If I look at it another way and say, we all have souls that have had many lifetimes, and that soul knew the souls of the parents and agreed to come in to teach those parents about grieving and about the loss, because for whatever reason they wanted it in this lifetime, this classroom, then suddenly you have a whole different perspective where that soul said, sure, I'll come in, I'll be born as an infant, I'll live a couple of days, and I go right back to the spiritual plane, where I'm much happier, frankly, than the difficulties living on the planet as a human. And so it really changes it around. And you can extend that to, say, children who grow up and they're profoundly developmentally disabled. You know, they're nonverbal, they just minimal functioning. you would once again say, well, what kind of a life is that to manifest as a soul if that's only one time around? But if you say, well, that person volunteered to come in to teach a whole lot of other people lessons about compassion for working with a person with this type of condition, once again, it takes on a whole different perspective on why reincarnation is so nice. And so it's like you're saying with the Akashic Records, then we're looking at a situation where we all have multiple lifetimes. We can treat this as a classroom for various reasons, and we come down and we manifest this life and learn from it.
Right. Right. So why do Western churches object to, well, the whole theory of reincarnation?
It kind of came across in a distorted form. We religions and just say, isn't it great that we have all these people, who know Hinduism, but Hinduism can be known at a whole lot of different levels, and a lot of people don't understand Hinduism at its core, even though they grow up in India. They really don't have a serious set of, like, what we would call Sunday school here for their religious training, and people pick it up on the fly, they pick it up secondhand, and there aren't that many, except in the upper caste or the Brahmin caste, who really get into the serious study of it. And it has a lot of economic component to it, too, that people who are wealthier or more what we call middle class can learn it better than the people who are, very poor. And what happened in the early 1900s when the messages started coming across of what does Hinduism look like and what does reincarnation look like, we get into a position where the image that came across, and people found it just absolutely abhorrent here, was the idea that somebody in India who's in an upper caste could be walking along, see some poor destitute person, bleeding sores, suffering in a ditch, not enough to eat, emaciated and all this, and they could walk by and essentially put their nose in the air and say, they are there because, due to the rules of reincarnation, that is the life they deserve. And therefore, I don't need to help them. It's not part of my obligation. That kind of distorted image came across. And because of that, many churches immediately just jumped to it on a very broad brush. They applied it to all concepts of reincarnation that, wow, this just gives you an excuse to ignore other people and not show mercy. Mm-hmm. The other thing that we have that goes on with the Western churches and reincarnation is you can look at it and I'll let people draw their own conclusions, but we certainly have a long-term 2,000-year history of the Western Church, going back to Christ and then becoming formalized with the Holy Roman Empire with Constantine, making Christianity the religion of pretty much the whole Western world. And that was very much also a power structure. It had its own governmental form in the church coming through the ages. And one of the ways that you can maintain control over people is to tell them, you have one shot at life, you better do it right, you better follow all the rules, you better not break any rules. If you do break the rules, you better come to confession, all those types of things, because you only have one chance. And when you die, then you're going to be waiting for the trumpets to blow in the skies, the second coming and all that, to be physically resurrected. And so if you had reincarnation, then you have people say, well, shoot, if I screw up this time, I can turn around, come back, and fix it next time. So what's the big concern? So that was a major push on the church also. Right.
So keeping control.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're going to take a little bit of a break, and we're going to come right back and talk more about past lives and the Akashic Records.
Find out which guests are being featured this week. Read our network press releases and read the blog posts from your favorite hosts. Go to iradioblog.com today, powered by the Voice America Talk Radio Network.
In Angela's book, Show Me How to Remember Your Power Through Self-Love and Forgiveness, you'll find an empowering book filled with messages of love and forgiveness. She gives powerful ways to use your own courage, strength, and love to heal your emotional and mental body. You can find the book at Amazon or visit Angela's website at angelablaha.com. The book is available in paperback and Kindle formats. Step back into your power. Get Angela's Show Me's at angelablaha.com. Sit back, relax, breathe. Reconnect to the still small voice within. Take the time to make a weekly visit to the sounds of the heart with host Sandy Goldstone. This unique program will help you cultivate and strengthen your heart's connection and feel love, beauty, and joy. You don't need to fear or suffer. Heed the call. Say yes to living from the heart's truth. Tune in live every Tuesday at 5 p.m. U.S. Pacific Time on the Voice America 7th Wave Channel. Join the evolving consciousness of humanity.
Now you don't have to stay linked to your desktop or laptop. Take Voice America on the go and listen anywhere. Get our mobile app for iPhone, BlackBerry, or Android at the Apple iTunes App Store, BlackBerry App World, or Android Market.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations. To connect with Angela Blaha or her guest today, please call into the program at 1-866-472-5795. That's 1-866-472-5795. You may also send an email to angelablaha005@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations.
Welcome back, everyone, and we're talking about past lives and the Akashic Records with Dave Barnett. Dave, I have a question about the soul. As a soul, do you understand or believe, or is the information held in the Akashic Records that choice follows the soul, or is that strictly for humankind?
Well, we run into a couple things on just nomenclature. If you read a lot of books on metaphysics, you'll find, and spirituality and even religion, you'll find that there are differentiations made between spirit and soul. Some people believe that the spirit is equivalent to what a lot of times we call the higher self, and that higher self or spirit sort of controls your reality so that the soul part of you that animates your body and is physically present can manifest things, experience things, go through a life chart or life path of experience for learning and training. One of the things I found, though, in my work is that the soul, the higher self, the spirit, however you choose to call it, your soul, can be in more than one physical body on the planet simultaneously, with the idea that the higher self is using it as an opportunity to gain even more experience and feels confident that it can handle the stresses of a human life and manage those. So I have found a number of people that I've worked with who have their souls in other bodies on the planet, and there's no life connection between those, and there's no necessary parallelism of the same age or anything like that. But it does seem to be possible, or at least from my impressions, my data gathering myself is that I've seen a number of clients who do have their soul in multiple bodies at the same time.
Right. So that puts a whole new spin on, like, what the soul can actually do and achieve within not only one lifetime, but multiple lifetimes.
Yeah, there's another facet to that I found very fascinating in my work and getting information, downloads and from guides and things, is that angels enjoy being incarnate on the planet, but being incarnate on the planet for an angel takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy. And so if you take the situation where you have maybe a little backwoods village in Central America and there's somebody there terribly ill, and what a coincidence, an itinerant healer comes in with his all his herbs and medicine and knowledge, and he agrees to stay there for a couple weeks, and he helps the person heal from their grave illness, and they get better, and then he says, "So nice to meet you," and takes off. And everybody says, "Well, we've never seen him before. That must have been an angel." Well, what I found out from talking to guides and others is that in many cases, it's easier to borrow the energy pattern of a currently existing human on the planet, manifest that temporary person like that healer for a short time to do a specific function. It's quicker and easier for them to use one of our patterns for that than it is for an angel to come down and fully incarnate and take on that role. So that's one more way that our soul can be spread out on the planet, even though it's a somewhat temporary basis. So there is some flexibility for us, and you can also get into the soul splinters about that too, if we want to.
Well, that just put a whole different spin on what we're totally capable of, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about the soul splinters and life charts and parallel universes. Let's dive deep into the subject.
Okay, I'll start with soul splinters. The concept on soul splinters is that your soul is in a body, and especially when you're a child, you may have what seems to you to be a very major event in your life that is scary or traumatic, and your soul may spin off a piece of itself and place it somewhere in the astral realm in typically a setting that's kind of nice, but sort of a safe place. And it sort of comes from the idea that the soul may have a reaction to something like driving a tricycle off the steps, getting hit by a car that's a survivable accident, or even something like severe sexual abuse or physical punishment, where the soul says, I didn't agree to this. I didn't come into this life with the idea that this would be something that happened to me. So at some level, it's kind of a surprise to the soul that was going to be part of the life experience. So part of that soul splinters off, resides in typically a body in the astral plane that looks like the body that it spun off at about the same age. So if little Susie is 3 years old and rides her tricycle off the steps and the soul splinters off, it may look very much like little Susie at 3 years old, hanging out somewhere in the astral plane in maybe a very nice little garden with flowers and a little creek going by and just kind of taking life easy. And so when I work with people who have these soul splinters, then you do what's called a soul retrieval. And you determine how many soul splinters there are. You sort of get concurrence that is acceptable to go get those and return them to the person. In the old days, a couple hundred years ago with shamans, they would go out and just forcibly grab the soul splinters and bring them back with no discussion, no concern with any type of free will. These days, most people who do any shamanic practice that returns a soul splinter, they go out and they talk to that splinter and help convince it that the person is now much older and mature and can protect that part of its consciousness when it returns to be reunited with the main part of the soul. I've found that typically I see 2 to 3 on people, and when I bring them back and have their stories of why they left, about 2/3 of the time I get positive feedback about either I remember that, or somebody in the family, when they bring it up and say, did I ever have this experience as a child? They say, well, yes, you did. How'd you know about that? It happened when you were 2. And I get feedback like that. The other ones are just typically nobody knows for sure. So that's another variation of the soul. Now, if we go to the parallel universes, that's a fascinating one. And I'll give you a quick story of one of my validations. Being an engineer in my day job, I always look for things that justify different points of view and data, so to speak. And so for me on parallel universes, a number of years ago, my wife and I were invited to a First Friday art show at a gallery. There's a storefront gallery in a little shopping shopping center, shopping mall, and it was from 5 to 7. And my wife and I drove up there. We got there at 5:30. There were 3 artists showing, including our friend Sophia, and sure enough, we found Sophia's artwork right away, but we didn't see Sophia. And we kept waiting, figuring that maybe she'd gone to the restroom, but no, she didn't show up. There were snacks there. The gallery owner had a photographer there who was taking pictures of the guests. And so we were just snacking on stuff, looking at stuff. And finally at 6:15, we decided to leave. And I sent an email to Sophia that night asking her, or sort of poking her a little bit, saying, that's kind of cheeky. You invite us to your gallery showing and you don't come yourself. Next afternoon, I got an email back from her and said, Dave, your email was very surprising to me because I was there the whole time. And not only that, she went back and met with the gallery owner. They went through all the photographer's pictures, and my wife and I didn't show up in any of them. So that, to me, was a very nice validation for a lot of these people's stories where they might be driving out in the woods at night and take a shortcut home, and then they find out the next day that the shortcut doesn't exist. Nobody's ever seen it. So I very much agree with parallel universes, and they're one of the possible solutions to quantum mechanics. So here's how I view the parallel universes with souls, is that you're going through your life, going through making choices, and every time you make a significant choice, you spin off another parallel universe where you chose the other option, so that your soul can have the experience from having selected either one of the options.
So what's your definition of a parallel universe?
It's another universe that looks very close and very similar to ours, and with the energies really building up over the past few years, some of them are getting very close. And so I think that probably everybody exists in 1 to 200 to 250 parallel universes where they are continuing to experience life in a very similar way, but not an identical way. So if you are a woman who married Joe in this present reality that we're in, there's another parallel universe where maybe you stayed single, and another one where you married Bob. And so all 3 of those are moving forward, and you're gaining the experience at the soul or spirit level with all those lifetimes in very similar circumstances, but not identical circumstances.
So is that different than having a soul that comes in and has several different bodies?
Yeah, because if your soul's on the planet in several different bodies at the same time, there's no connection or similarity between those lifetimes. Right. Whereas with the parallel universes, what I see is, I could go to a parallel universe and meet with an Angela Blaha who is a multimillionaire and lives in New York City, because that was a different life path that you chose to try to have that experience at a high spiritual level. That doesn't mean that you necessarily commune with those other lifetimes on a routine basis. There's somewhat of a barrier there, but I also see that those barriers getting very thin. I've run into an exact copy of myself one time. I was out in Las Vegas in the Luxor casino on their atrium level, and I looked across the atrium. I was stuck in a line. I couldn't get out because I was waiting for an attraction. And there was an identical copy of myself, even to the same hat, the same shirt, same glasses. And when I talked to intuitives, once again looking for validations later on, they said, yeah, that was a copy of you from a parallel universe, and the 2 universes overlapped for a short time, so you could see yourself. Wow. That's pretty cool. I would be interested in having an experience like that. That's, you'd be looking at yourself going, what do they know I don't? This is cool. Where'd you come from?
At the same time, you'd be
like,
like,
to ask you the same thing.
Yeah. And at the same time, you'd be like, what is happening?
Absolutely.
That's funny. So we're going to take a little bit of a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about how parallel universes are different, or are they the same as timelines?
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Find out which guests are being featured this week. Read our network press releases and read the blog posts from your favorite hosts. Go to iradioblog.com today, powered by the Voice America Talk Radio Network.
In Angela's book, Show Me How to Remember Your Power Through Self-Love and Forgiveness, you'll find an empowering book filled with messages of love and forgiveness. She gives powerful ways to use your own courage, strength, and love to heal your emotional and mental body. You can find the book at Amazon or visit Angela's website at angelablaha.com. The book is available in paperback and Kindle formats. Step back into your power. Get Angela's Show Me's at angelablaha.com.
Now you don't have to stay linked to your desktop or laptop. Take Voice America on the go and listen anywhere. Get our mobile app for iPhone, BlackBerry, or Android at the Apple iTunes App Store, BlackBerry App World, or Android Market.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations. To connect with Angela Blaha or her guest today, please call into the program at 1-866-472-5795. That's 1-866-472-5795. You may also send an email to angelablaha005@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations.
Welcome back, everyone. So, Dave, I want to talk about parallel universes and how they're either different or not different from, dimensions dimensions and timelines.
I think they're probably very similar in concept, or sort of different nomenclature for the same thing. I know that there are timelines and time loops that people talk about. I do give a lot of credibility to the idea that there may be, I'll call them ETs, extraterrestrials, that are coming to visit us from other times. And some of them may be even our future evolved selves coming back here to correct things. There's a series of books by an author in Sedona where he channeled a lot of material on the Zeta Reticuli, who are supposedly us a million years from now, but too highly evolved, and they're coming back to try to adjust things. So I think that's a possibility on that too. What I've also found on when I was really starting to get a lot of coaching from the spiritual plane on my development about 10 or 12 years ago, they had me go back to 3 past lifetimes where I had taken a stand against the church on the issue of that there is no hell, from my point of view, that if people find themselves in a hell, it's because they self-created it through illusion. But I was very upset with the formal church's teachings on hell, and ended up 3 lifetimes where I was burned at the stake for essentially confronting the church. They had me go back on those lifetimes and tone it down so I could continue teaching to a ripe old age in the village, and do it on the sly. And so that, to me, is an indication that there are time paths and time intricacies that I don't buy into the idea that just because something happened in the past that it's over and done with and immovable. I don't agree with that. Another experience I had was I was taken back to a previous lifetime to meet the person, and it was a Hindu mystic that lived out in the woods. And I walked up to his little campfire, and he introduced himself as Sri Ananda, and I said, "Oh, you're one of my past lives." And he started laughing very hard, and he goes, "No, you're one of my future lives." And that really changed my point of view on all of that, that this stuff is still accessible, and not only is it accessible to see it, it's changeable. And a lot of people, I think, don't understand it or realize it or try to exercise that.
Well, why do you think that is? Because I find it very valuable. Like, I brought several things with me this lifetime to heal up or to release, I should say. And like the knowledge and the wisdom and just the sense of how big and how powerful we really are as a soul, like, it changes everything.
Yeah. It seems to me kind of like this. Back when we used to routinely have slide projectors or movie projectors, but especially a slide, if you had a fixed slide image and you took your projector and you had it perfectly in focus and then you started to turn the ring on the lens that would take it out of focus, then you start to see the image kind of go everywhere. When I look at us and where we are, you can think of us as being just a single point. You're Angela. You're walking on the planet. The single point of that soul is Angela. And then we start talking, well, actually you have extensions out to two sides, like wings. You have these parallel lifetimes. And those are also traveling with you, and not necessarily perfectly synced, but similar. And then we can start saying, well, you have a trail behind you of lifetimes that are also still actively participating with you, where you may need to do things to cut off some of those energies in some cases that are bleeding over to this lifetime because they're affecting you. And then the next obvious question out of that cluster, so now you're a dot, but you're surrounded by dots left and right, and you're surrounded by dots going back behind you. Are the dots going forward? And there are a lot of concepts out there about all the future lifetimes that are also already manifesting. And in some cases, just as you might go back to a past lifetime and attempt to influence it to change some type of karmic impact, there may be future lifetimes that are coming back to affect you. Please don't eat that piece of chocolate cake. Please don't wreck your car into that tree. Please, this type of thing where you may be doing something that is going to alter your life and essentially leave an issue or a problem for a future lifetime. And I'm open to that concept too, for things coming back to influence you. So. This really gets down to a lot of how much free will do we really have, and I think we have a small amount to make dumb mistakes at the local level, but I think in terms of the really huge picture, if no matter how much money you have, if you're not meant to ever be president of the United States, you never will be, because that's not part of your path, that's not part of your plan, so to speak.
Right. So I want to skip over to composites, like soul composites, and how those are different or not different than a walk-in. Because I feel like I've had soul composites. I'm pretty sure I have not had a walk-in, but I know I've had the composites.
Yeah, this is where we get into terminology, and people continue to come up with new ways to view it, and the words give you mind models for how you can see it. So if we go back to Sue Montgomery and talking about, Ruth Montgomery talking about walk-ins, the concept then in the 70s, 80s was your life reaches some point where you as a soul in the body are saying, I can't learn anymore, I don't want to go on, whatever, and therefore I'm probably going to die either from suicide or from an accident or from a severe illness. And bad things happen, you're in the hospital, it's critical, the doctor says you may not live another 24 hours, and the next morning the person sits up in the hospital bed, pulls the tubes out, says, where are my clothes, I'm going home, I feel fine. Only they have a new soul in their body that replaced the born-in soul, and so we call that the walk-in soul. And that was very tough on a lot of families because the walk-in soul usually had very little familiarity with the taste or the education or the family relationships, and would typically immediately be alienated with the family and want to just take off, get a divorce, and disappear. Well, then there are some nicer ways to do that that aren't quite so abrupt. And one of the ones that came along later was called soul braiding. And this was maybe high vibration beings or Tibetan ascended masters or others in the spiritual plane. The guardians of the White Light Brotherhood, who are in the color rays, from the colors of the rainbow for the 7 days of the week, the 7 colors. maybe you're tying to those energies. And those energies might come into your energy, and they don't displace your soul or your soul concept, but they get enmeshed with it. And so you may start manifesting a lot of knowledge, a lot of intuitive gifts, things like that, and they're there to stay in what they call a soul braid. And then other people have looked at that and say, well, it may come down as overlays or coverlays, where, say, for example, you come into this life and you have soul level 100 out of the total capacity of what your soul can do out of 1,000, and you start learning things, and as a young adult, you start getting hits on a spiritual level that say, you're ready for more, but we don't want to hurt your systems. That's a common theme, is if we overload you, your nervous system could be damaged by what we would like you to pick up and be able to use. And suddenly you sort of get a download of soul level 200. And that could come in as a soul braid or a soul overlay. And it's not somebody else. It's just a higher level of the spiritual part of what makes you coming out of the spiritual plane. And then you may go forward another 10 or 15 years. You continue to learn about your intuitive gifts, and then suddenly you get level 300 coming down. And so I know a number of people who've had that approach. So it's not a separate soul. It's not a separate spiritual entity from the spiritual plane. It's a higher level piece of you to enable you to handle the energy of higher gifts.
So each time I've had another level come in, I have time missing. Is that common?
I'm sorry, you have what?
Missing time, like days. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And some of that is just synchronizing things and getting the information to all line up together. So, and sometimes the blast of information you get with another layer coming in can sort of inundate you for a little while, and then you have a little bit of catching up to do. And there may be some filtering in your mind over, is this new stuff or is this the old stuff? I don't want to lose track, but those types of decisions are being made at some level.
I see. So can we just ask for these types of things, or are these sort of like pre-positioned in the lifetimes that we bring in?
What I gather from it is you go through preparation, and this might be a downloaded program where you're just inspired to really start cleaning up your act, to getting clarity, to getting things out of your subconscious that hold you back, to separating from past lives and releasing karma there, all these types of things in preparation. And then these downloads show up because you're clear enough to get it and to handle it, but you aren't at a level yet where you can handle all of what they want to give you. And so I don't know that you ask for it versus you work on the merit badges to qualify for it so that it will happen. I think it can happen to most people, but there's a lot of people out there who aren't highly motivated to really get on track. A friend of mine and I call it somebody's like seeking awakening or seeking very high-level growth is their hair's on fire and they're looking for a pond to jump in. When you run into the people who have that kind of life experience and they're zooming forward, their consciousness is going up very rapidly, and they're probably some of the prime candidates to get these higher levels coming down into them so that they can handle the higher vibration work.
Mm-hmm. That would be me. My hair's always on fire, and I'm always looking for some pond to jump into. We're going to take another short little break, and we'll be right back.
Find out which guests are being featured this week. Read our network press releases and read the blog posts from your favorite hosts. Go to iradioblog.com today, powered by the Voice America Talk Radio Network.
In Angela's book, Show Me How to Remember Your Power Through Self-Love and Forgiveness. You'll find an empowering book filled with messages of love and forgiveness. She gives powerful ways to use your own courage, strength, and love to heal your emotional and mental body. You can find the book at Amazon or visit Angela's website at angelablaha.com. The book is available in paperback and Kindle formats. Step back into your power. Get Angela's Show Me's at angelablaha.com.
Now you don't have to stay linked to your desktop or laptop. Take Voice America on the go and listen anywhere. Get our mobile app for iPhone, BlackBerry, or Android at the Apple iTunes App Store, BlackBerry App World, or Android Market.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations. To connect with Angela Blaha or her guest today, please call into the program at 1-866-472-5795. That's 1-866-472-5795. You may also send an email to angelablaha005@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations.
Welcome back, and we're here with Dave Barnett. We're talking about past lives, the Akashic records, and let's pull in karma. Dave, how does karma tie in with our past lives, and how do we release it?
Well, let's talk about karma a little bit first and what the basic concept is. Again, this is a term that's come from the East, and it gets distorted in various ways here. The way that we don't want to use it, there's so many, bumper stickers and things that say, what goes around comes around, which is sort of a lot of people's simplistic idea of what karma is. In the bigger picture, karma is not meant as revenge. It's not meant as punishment. It's not meant as payback. What karma really is the opportunity to experience all different aspects of a situation where possibly in one lifetime you had a challenge and you failed. For example, in a lifetime in the Old West, you may have had an opportunity where you could talk out a disagreement with another cowboy at the bar, but rather than that, you ended up pulling back real quick, slapping leather, pulling out your gun, and shooting and killing the other guy at the bar. So you did have a specific choice there where you could let go of your ego and walk away, or you could do something about it in a way that was kind of negative. So the simplistic view of karma would just say, okay, you're going to be a cowboy again, the other guy's going to have a chance to shoot you, so you can see what it feels like. It goes much bigger than that, and I'll tell you the big way it goes, and then how it's also getting limited again. In the East, you see the concept of the wheel of karma, that it's one of the stickiest things that traps you on this planet, where you have to go through lifetime after lifetime to release the karma. Karma is also considered to be one of the traps for a bodhisattva, a person who's been enlightened and decides to come back to the planet even though they don't need to, so they can be a teacher. And the problem with the bodhisattva is that they might make a karmic mistake and get caught up in karma again, and suddenly, whereas they were free before after their enlightenment, now they have some more lifetimes to try to work it off again. But karma can go much bigger. It can go, if we go back to the cowboy example, you might experience several lifetimes about that situation where you're the dead guy's wife. You get to experience having your husband shot. Or you could be the mother, and you could experience having your son shot and killed, things like that. So it's sort of to give you the bigger picture of what your actions can do. Now, you can look at our life here and say, everything around us is an illusion. We're actors on a big stage. To a certain degree, we're fairly pre-planned in our opportunities to learn. We're holding a script. We wear a costume, and everything around us is a prop. Or, as they say in the Eastern side, this big illusion called Maya around us. But even so, karma can still get involved with how do you live your life so that generally you are helping others. And not hurting others, taking advantage of others, coercing others, things like that. Now, the problem that we've had in the past is if we look at the timelines for our lives, if it takes 5 or 10 lifetimes to work off a major event where you made a big mistake in another life, to understand all the different aspects of that, that can take a long time. Things are speeding up so much now that we don't necessarily have the time to experience all those different forms of karma, to keep coming back over and over a span of 500 to 1,000 years to try it in different ways to see what those lifetimes would be like. So one of the gifts I was given a couple years ago was something called karma burning. Now, there are swamis and yogis and even gurus in the eastern side, a few of whom are what they call karma eaters. And when they have a disciple who meets some type of criteria, that gifted spiritual person can eat the karma of that disciple and remove the karma from the person. And it might be on a limited basis or it might be on a very large-scale basis. What I've come to be taught how to do in the spiritual plane is how to do karma burning, where I'm allowed to put a person in a guided meditation in a big room where they're surrounded in a big circle of chairs with all the people that they have karmic ties with from this lifetime and other lifetimes, have a great big crystal assembly in the middle of the room, activate that crystal assembly. It draws the karma out of all the participants there and converts it into undifferentiated energy for the universe. And so that's allowing these people to be squeaky clean and totally free of karma for all their lifetimes, which I think is a wonderful thing. I see things now moving fast, moving forward so quickly that I think the universe and the spiritual powers acknowledge that we don't have time to sort of play around with having lifetime after lifetime trying all these different aspects of a situation. So I think you're going to see other people showing up with these gifts too, and a lot of people doing this.
Right. So when you look into the Akashic Records, can you see karma?
I can see some of it. The way I work with the Akashic Records, whenever I set intentions, I get it. So one of the things I find when I do energy clearings is I check the people to see if they have oaths and vows either from them against somebody else in a past lifetime or the reverse. And then I can go find the year and the who's who in the situation. For example, somebody, say I have a client, and I find out that they were burned as a witch in the 1400s. And this one is different because as they were being tortured, they found out who accused them, and they told that person something like, "I'll never forget this, I'll never forgive you, and God will never forgive you." That can create a karmic entanglement with that other person, and then every 3 or 4 lifetimes, those people show up together in the same lifetime in an antagonistic relationship, and they may even have aches and pains at about the same age as when they were tortured as, in the witchcraft thing. So I can help people release those, and so those come through as an intention on looking at the Akashic Records to see if people have these ties.
Cool. So there's lots of, the Akashic Records hold all of our information, so if you need to figure anything out, go there first.
Well, it's just another name for a global set of records over all events and everything has happened. And you sort of look at humans, we have memory in our brains, but we also have memory neurons in our hearts. We also have neurons that can form memories in our digestive tract. And so we have these different aspects, and a lot of people don't realize it until you get these very fascinating stories about somebody who gets a heart and a heart transplant, and they start having dreams or memories of the person who donated the heart. And it's like, well, wait a second, there was no brain that came over. No, but the heart has neurons too, and has neural memory cells. And the Chinese medicine system actually places a significant emphasis on the memory system in the heart. So there's a lot of things we're learning, and I think a lot of people tap into the Akashic Records without having any interest in spirituality. Information comes to them, whether you call it intuition, whether you call it, I just had a sudden flash, those types of things. I think everybody's tapping into the Akashic Records all the time.
I would totally agree. Dave, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show today and for talking about a couple of my very favorite things in the whole wide world.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you.
So if you need information about the Akashic Records, check out Dave Barnett. All of his information is on Seventh Wave Voice America under Conscious Conversations. And so, again, listeners, if there's any comments or information that you want to give us as feedback, I'm always open and so willing to have feedback. So until next time, have an amazing week, everyone. And thank you again, Dave, and all my love to each and every one of you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into this week's edition of Conscious Conversations. Be sure to join Angela Blaha for another edition next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America 7th Wave channel. Until our next meeting, have an extraordinary week.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program brought to you on the Seventh Wave Network. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit seventhwavenetwork.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the preceding program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.